We're recording this. If you particularly don't want to be recorded, perhaps you'd like to turn off your video. It's just simply for our records. Um, I'm Sam, one of the coordinators of the action team for Dorset Climate Action Network with Helen. The action team meets about every 2 weeks, where we run the day-to-day business, but our power is delegated from the trustees. The trustees meet about every 3 months, and of course the AGM. Currently, the chairman of the trustees is Vicky, but she's planning to stand down, so we're going to hopefully elect a new one. And we're AGM is quite a short business meeting, probably take about 20 minutes, after which we're delighted to have Nick Ireland from Dorset Council to give a presentation on Dorset Council policy. So I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to talk about our culture.
Hello, welcome everyone. Just a few bits about Zoom etiquette and Dorset Can culture. If you could mute unless you're talking, please. And if when you want to talk, if you just use a hand signal or the reactions button, please do use the chat to record any questions you want to ask. Okay, so at Dorset Can, we want to create a culture where the wisdom of the whole group is valued, where everyone will have an equal opportunity to express their views. To preserve this culture, we'll need to politely interject at times, so we hear from a diversity of voices when we're talking about questions and so on. We want to create a collaborative atmosphere where we're focused on solutions to problems and how we can find common ground. When we do challenge each other, we do it respectfully and to encourage each other to do better. We welcome all people, but not all behaviours. We expect everyone to respect each other. If anyone is disrespectful, we will ask them to leave, but we will also always leave the door open. We understand that climate change and its impact can be an emotional and challenging subject, and we all naturally have strong feelings about it. The climate and ecological emergency is the biggest challenge of this moment in human history and our lifetime. Everyone here is here because they care about their family and their community and want to do something about this emergency. We all know that deep down we're stronger together. So I'd like to propose that the Chair of Trustees, Vicky, is the chair of this meeting, and ask her to open the meeting formally.
Thanks, Helen. So this is the formal annual general meeting of Dorset Can. Have we got any apologies and absences? And I'm handing over to Emma, who's recording those. I think we've got a couple, haven't we, Emma?
Yes, so we've got Belinda Barden, Max Griffith and Alex Stevens.
Any other absences anybody knows about? Okay, can we approve the record of the annual general meeting held on the 9th of May 2024? Anybody who was there? I've read the minutes, I was there. I think it's a correct record. Are we okay to approve it? Thank you. Okay, and the next thing is the annual report of the trustees, which was agreed by the trustees at the beginning of the year, and it covers the period from when we were designated as a charitable incorporated organisation in August 2023 to the end of December 2024. So if you think you've done things since then, you're going to have to keep quiet about them because we're stopping at the end of December, because that's the kind of statutory reporting period. So I'm going to just share a few slides with you. So this is our annual report and accounts for end of 2023 and 2024. A little bit of background on Dorset Can. Our mission statement is community-led actions, cut carbon emissions, adapt to our changing climate and restore nature across Dorset. And that has been agreed during the relevant period. We've been going for about 4 years. As I said, Michael Dow was one of the founder members, but we became a charitable incorporated organisation in August 2023. We have 4 part-time contractors, but everybody else is a volunteer and unpaid. We have about 15 people in our core action team, and they are the steering group and make executive decisions. We have over 1,000 members, individual members, and 84 organisations. And we've counted up our active volunteers, and it was about 269 active volunteers, and then 10 trustees. We have lots of followers as well, people who get our newsletters and so forth. We operate mainly in terms of delivering practical work in teams. You can see the teams there. We've recently added rivers and beaches, and actually that misses out that list, the Great Big Dorset Hedge. I'm very sorry about that, because that comes below I see it because it comes below it. So the next thing is all the highlights of that period of time. So I mentioned the Great Big Dorset Hedge, which is fantastically led by John Calder, who coordinates lots of volunteers, and they've clocked up 3,000 volunteer hours and surveyed 450 kilometres of hedge, which is pretty astounding, across 50 parishes. And as well as surveying, during that period, they started hedge planting as well. And their mission is to restore and enhance hedges across Dorset. And I will say a little bit more about their future plans in a minute. Then we've got low energy neighbourhoods, and that's mainly the greener open homes, where we get local residents to open their homes to visitors. We had about 200 visitors to 40 homes in the last year. We've organised solar events to promote solar energy, solar rooftop energy to local residents. And we're involved in enabling and working with other community energy projects like the one in Loaders. We've, during the period, started up carbon literacy training, which is mainly for town and parish councils and organisations, but individuals can also attend. And it's mostly held online. But I'll report on some new developments in a minute. But we had 26 people accredited as having been trained in carbon literacy during that period. And thanks to Belinda Borden and Helen and the team for running those events. I didn't say thank you to Sam Wilberforce for the low energy work. We've got Dorset Deserves Better, which is the local plan coalition of organisations lobbying for a better local plan, which is coordinated by Giles Watts. And also we had the Dorset COP last year in Bournemouth, and we had 300 attendees, and that was in partnership with Zero Carbon Dorset and Sustainable Dorset. And it was all about the power of local communities, and very inspiring for the participants. And then we run a lot of online networking events for our teams and areas of interest. And I've just focused on the two that were most active during that time period, which were about food resilience, which Sandra Reeves did a fantastic job mobilising, got loads and loads of people along to talk about that over a series of meetings, and energy, again, focusing on things like batteries and renewables. Every year we meet in the autumn to discuss our strategy for the coming year, and anybody here at this meeting is welcome to come and join in our strategy day. It's really good, really inspiring. We get some great speakers, and we decide roughly what we're going to be doing over the next year. So focusing mainly on the Great Big Dorset Hedge, which is our kind of flagship project. It's got a target of surveying 500 kilometres of field boundaries, planting 5 kilometres of hedges, clocking up another 3,000 hours of survey time, adding 40 additional farms, and growing the volunteer base, and indeed, getting paid help in to reduce the pressure on the unpaid coordinator, who's otherwise spending an awful lot of time on it and doing a great job. So that's really exciting plans, and a lot of interest from other organisations in supporting that work. For the low energy neighbourhoods, we're hoping to extend it to new areas and get more homes involved. And if you're somebody who has got renewables at home, or you've got a wildlife garden, or some other examples of sustainable living like rainwater harvesting, please could you message Sam, because he'd love to hear from you, so that we can open up some more homes and get more people in and learning about these things, and then hopefully doing it themselves. The carbon literacy training's going really well. Already had some in-person sessions, and 75 trained would be the goal for this year. Dorset Deserves Better will be responding to the new local plan, and the Dorset COP will be in November at Sturminster Newton. And again, Dorset Can is a partner in that. We've got more online networking events. We've already had some really great ones this year. We've got a new waste team and a new rivers and beaches team, and we're going to be doing more with energy and food. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. I've no doubt that the coordinators will pop a message in the chat if I have. One of our main challenges has been, as a new charity, has been to develop a sustainable funding base. We've got, as I said, 2 paid coordinators who are self-employed, and they do the donkey work of all the administration, managing the bureaucracy and the networking and the communication. So it's really important that we have them in post. And we've been doing a lot of fundraising to try and get ourselves on a longer term reliable footing. And we want to grow our projects so that we can increase our impact. We've got some amazingly ambitious plans, and they need to be funded as well. During this time period, we were funded by those organisations you can see on your screen. A lot of that funding went to the Great Big Dorset Hedge. And yes, and thank you to everybody here who's donated to us, particularly recently during the Big Give match funding week, which you were terribly generous and really helped us for the next few months. And I'm now going to hand over to Henry Lovegrove, who's our treasurer. And I just want to say before we start, thank you very much to Henry. He does want to stand down, and if anybody here has an interest in that role, we'd love to hear from you. Please could you talk to Henry about what it involves? But he's been doing a great job since the get-go, looking after our finances. So over to Henry.
Thank you, Vicky. Yes, I'm very happy to talk through what I do. I'm just stepping down because I'm overcommitted with many other interests. And it is interesting, and you're mixing with some very nice people. These are the annual accounts. It's the first ones we've sent in to the Charity Commission. And there are no comparative periods because we actually became a CIO on the 11th of August, as you can see there. So this is actually for a sort of 17-month period, I suppose, nearly. So it's more than a year. This section obviously deals with receipts and payments. These are the items individually and the amounts individually. There are 3 columns. Well, there are actually 4, but we don't have any endowment funds. We have to split our income and expenditure between unrestricted funds, which are core costs basically, or items that we want to promote or whatever, and restricted funds, which relate to projects. And the income for that period was only restricted in the case of the Great Big Dorset Hedge. Total income or turnover for the period, 53,000 in total, but obviously that's 17 months. And it's going to be much, much higher this year. Next slide, please. Okay, now we move on to the expenditure, and that's the split of expenditure. Remember the 3 columns. The first one there is unrestricted funds, second is restricted funds, third endowment funds, which are nil, and this one is the total. So we threw a Cayley, which made a £200 odd profit. Great Big Dorset Hedge, massive. Look at that, 28,000. Greener Homes, nearly 3,000. And these are our sort of running costs here. Insurance will have increased considerably this year. And there we have the first year where we show a figure for the sort of administrative help provided by, in that year, Alex Stephen, who's been absolutely enormously helpful in progressing the charity. A couple of items, £700 for training, website, £400. So with some of these publicity on the website, we actually spend more, but it's partly recharged to the Great Big Dorset Hedge, so it appears in the 28,000. And shall we move on to the third slide there? Thank you. So these are the net figures for firstly, unrestricted funds made a small surplus. Restricted funds we managed to put by 6,000 plus, and the cash funds at the end of the year £7,500, which was reasonably comfortable, but £1,160 to cover core costs won't go very far. But we have recovered that position due to grants from the Raby Trust in particular, and Dorset Community Energy, and the Big Give, which has been massively successful, but obviously after the end of this period. And that money is almost entirely in our bank current account at the end of the year. Okay, so please, any questions? Welcome any questions. We can go back through that in detail if anybody wants more detail.
And Henry,
Giles?
yeah, I might just add that you also do services for other organisations, banking services for organisations in Dorset. So we've used our bank accounts and facilities to be able to apply for grants on behalf of other organisations who are too small to have those facilities and policies themselves, and that's enabled us to support those groups, and that's been quite successful. And thank you to Henry for enabling that to happen.
Yes, and none of those figures appear in the ones I've just supplied to you.
Okay, well, thanks very much to Henry, and a reminder that we are looking for a new treasurer. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the charity trustees. We have to rotate our trustees, and so we have two that are rotating. We have to thank Jenny Morissetti, who's standing down as a trustee but has been with us from the start. Is very busy with Sustainable Dorset and her other projects and organising the Dorset COP. So we're grateful to her. And re-standing as trustees are Giles Watts and Belinda Borden. And Giles, you're here. Do you want to say a few words, or do you want to wait until later?
Probably best to wait until later.
Okay. I hope the way we approve our trustees at a general meeting is just by a simple show of hands. So everybody who agrees with Giles Watts and Belinda Borden, who's already a trustee, carrying on as trustees, could you please put your hand up? And Emma's scanning the room to make sure it's a majority. Yeah, Emma, are we happy? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for doing that.
We do have a couple of hands up, Vicky.
Oh, yes, we do. Margaret.
I put my hand up physically. I didn't think I'd put my hand up. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. We don't mind how you put it up. That's fine. Linda, do you have your hand up really? We can't hear you.
Sorry, I don't know why my hand has gone up there.
Oh, don't worry.
I
It's
think
nice to see it. Well, audience participation is a good thing. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's right. So we have 3 people who are standing to be new trustees for Dorset Council, which is fantastic news that we've got that level of interest. And we can have up to 15 trustees, and we've currently got 9 with Jenny standing down. So we can have all 3 of them, which is what I'm recommending. But we just go through them one at a time, and then we'll invite the ones that are here to just say a few words about themselves or why they want to be a trustee. And I'll start with John West.
Good evening, everybody. My name's John West. I live in Bridport. I've been active environmentally for, I don't know, probably 50 years, I guess, on and off. Currently, I'm a member of Sustainable Bridport and West Dorset Friends of the Earth. I've been a member of Dorset Can for a while now, and with a little bit more time, I'm a busy person, but I'm very keen to get involved and offer whatever I can to Dorset Can as a trustee, and hopefully get involved in some activities directly as well.
Thanks very much, John. Can I ask for a show of hands to support John in joining us as a trustee with his very relevant background? I'm assuming everybody's put up a little yellow hand, is putting up their hand to vote and not putting up their hand to make a comment. Okay, lovely. Right, excellent. Right, if you want to put your hands down, that's great. The next person who I don't think is here is Nicola Harris. And you've all had is Nicola Harris here? If you are, please speak. I think you've all had an opportunity to look at the biographies of the trustees who are standing, but Nicola is believes community-driven climate action is one of the most powerful tools we have to drive change, whether that be shifting individual behaviour or influencing policies at the local, national and international levels. She's worked for over 20 years as a community organiser on climate justice, environmental protection, animal advocacy and peace. And she's a co-founder of the Plant-Based Treaty Initiative. And she studied at Bournemouth University, so I think that must be where she's from. So could we please support Nicola in being a trustee? Thank you. That's excellent. And finally, our third candidate is Max Griffith. He was hoping to be here, but he's had an operation today, so it would be pretty sterling of him if he was here. I'm assuming he's not, but Max has been helping us with the new waste team and reinvigorating the whole thing. His background is as an inventor and a designer, so his creative thinking will be really helpful to us. He has a commercial background, so he's used to managing money and all that kind of thing. So can I suggest that we all support Max Griffith in being a trustee for Dorset Can? And I'm just checking, Emma, you're happy that everyone got a majority? There were no dissenters. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. So we've got them. If anybody does want to stand as a trustee at any time, if you message Dorset Can, we can actually appoint trustees. The trustees can themselves add trustees at any time. So the next meeting would be in the autumn. So that would be the next opportunity. So if you think, oh, actually, I do fancy doing that, I could really offer something to Dorset Can, we'd love to hear from you. So the next item is the election of the new chair. I'm standing down. I've done it from the beginning, and I just want to rest, really. And I'm delighted to say that we have one candidate. But I need to say, before I name this candidate, is there anybody else who's interested in being the chair? It's like the bit at a wedding when you're hoping nobody says yes. Right, okay, so the candidate is Giles Watts, and I'm going to invite Giles to say a few words about why he wants to be chair, what he has to offer.
Goodness me, well, thank you very much, Vicky. Well, I mean, I guess I wasn't quite a founder member of Dorset Can, but I came in pretty early on in the first few months. And was intrigued by this new Dorset-wide environmental group that was set up. And I had the great privilege of working with Michael Dower in the advocacy team and responding to in fact, Dorset Council's first climate and ecological emergency strategy and the first draft local plan, which was a bit of a baptism of fire. Since then, I've worked extensively with Dorset Can, and I guess I lead the advocacy team these days, and that's sprung a few legs. The Dorset COP being one of them, so I'm sort of the lead for that, which I think has been fantastic as an event which helps to bring together and network lots of environmental and climate change organisations across Dorset. We also, with Michael Dower, started the Dorset Deserves campaign, which has somewhat been derailed by all the changes that have taken place since then. But we are looking forward to the new version of the local plan, though we're not looking forward to the very large number of executive houses, which look like they're going to be built on greenfield sites. But we will respond to that later this year. And I've been involved with many other things in Dorset Can, with the questions team, asking, hopefully probing critical but supportive questions of Dorset Council. I had to be careful because Nick Ireland is here on the link tonight. Hi, Nick. The transport team with Helen, and I'm the secretary of the local Dorchester TAG, the Transport Action Group. which has been great to be able to coordinate that between the two, and a few other things. So as regards being the chair of Dorset Can, I don't expect there to be many changes. I would like to be able to support the great organisation that's been built by Vicky and others over the years, and to continue to see that thrive and prosper and be even more effective in the future. So I hope you will support my proposal to become the chair for a short period. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Giles, and thank you very much for standing. Can we have a show of hands to support Giles? Great, thank you very much. I think, Emma, we've got a majority again. Okay, so
thank you very much, everybody.
And Giles will be chairing the meeting just after this very last item. Giles is going to chair the Nick Ireland portion of the meeting. Oh, Ian, have you got your hand up for a reason? No, I don't think you have. So the last item is any other business. If you have, speak now. Nobody has pre-notified me of anything. Great, thank you. So over to Giles and over to Nick. For the next bit, thanks so much everyone for turning up and bearing with us. AGMs aren't the most interesting of things, but I think we cracked through it fairly promptly. Thanks very much.
And thank you,
very
Vicky,
much.
for being the chair for so long. Thank you.
Well, I was going to say my first responsibility is really to say a huge thank you to Vicky for all she has done over the last 4 years in steering this organisation from its humble beginnings to what you see today. And she has been a very steady person. We have been incredibly lucky to have someone with her experience to guide us and taking us through becoming a CIO, for instance, all the ramifications, all the fundraising that's gone on, all the delicate negotiations. A lot of that's been down to Vicky's hard work in the background. So I think on behalf of all of us, I'd just like to say, Vicky, thank you very much indeed. You have left this organisation in a great state, and we really owe you a huge debt of thanks. Give you the traditional handshaking. So you'll be glad to know, phew, that's the end of the rather sort of terse and boring part of the meeting, but very necessary, of course. And we can move on to the much more interesting part. And we are delighted to have Councillor Nick Ireland with us today. Nick, as you know, is the straightforward part is that he is a Liberal Democrat councillor for Crossways Ward, and more importantly, he is the leader of Dorset Council, and so very influential in our future, and has already done a number of very positive things towards the environment and climate change, and we're going to hear more of that in a moment. I hope Nick won't mind. That was the sort of, when I asked whether he had an introduction, that was the sort of rather grey parts we got. But I thought, like President Trump demanding to vet all of Harvard students, that who do no harm to trawl into the social media to see if I could dig up anything a little bit more interesting about Nick. Nick, you'll be glad to know that actually you've been well guarded, and there's nothing too terrible that I could find. But a couple of interesting facts which I didn't know. Nick comes from Liverpool, so the obvious question is to ask him whether he is a Liverpool or an Everton supporter. Nick?
Blue.
I didn't hear.
Yeah. Blue, Everton.
Blue. There's a Liberal Democrat admitting to have a blue shirt, so that's a definite dodgy moment, but excellent stuff. And of course, Everton and Liverpool have both done extremely well this season. I also discovered that Nick is a triathlete, and unbelievably a channel swimmer. I'm shocked and amazed and in great admiration. Can you tell us anything about your channel swimming exploits?
It was a lot of hard work for 2 years, and then 14 hours and 39 minutes of, I wouldn't say complete pain, but yeah. I'm not going to do it again.
Well, I tell you, I'm super impressed. Anyway, that's probably enough in the way of introductions, but thank you very much indeed for coming today, and we're delighted to have you. So if you have any, do you have any slides to share?
I
Perhaps
do
you'd
have
like
some
to
slides. I was
introduce
just going to
yourself.
spend a couple of minutes on an introduction, and then I will share some slides. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. I'll rattle through them and then questions at the end. I haven't shared on Zoom for a long time because we use Teams all the time. So bear with me. I might be able to see you, or I don't know what the experience is going to be for me or you. Hopefully you'll see the slides. I guess a bit of a background. So when Dorset Council came into existence back in 2019, the very first meeting, there was a presentation from Extinction Rebellion. So Kaz and a few of her colleagues, and on the back of that, we suspended standing orders and declared a climate emergency. It was myself and Paul Kimber who proposed and seconded it, and I think everybody but 2 people voted for it. And that sort of embedded some behaviours into Dorset Council over the last 5 years, 6 years now. And then one of the first things we did after we took power last year as the Liberal Democratic administration was to declare a nature emergency. So, in both of those, we weren't certainly the first. Many other councils have done it. We were, we're riding on the coattails of others, but it was the right thing to do. And in continuation of that, we produced a new council plan, which is 24 to 29. And it has 4 main priorities, and you can look it up and read it. And it's underpinned by other strategy documents, but one of the 4 priorities is to respond to the climate and nature crisis. I'm just quoting verbatim, because it's extremely important to everything Dorset Council does. Other things we've done since, we've brought our net zero targets forward for both the Dorset Council's emissions and county, or Dorset Council area emissions, I should say. We actually invested in the climate team during the 25-26 budget discussions, so they actually have 2 extra people and got more money, whereas many other parts of the council didn't, I'm afraid. We are working on the local plan, which I know Giles and some of the people who are heavily involved with. We're doing it absolutely as quickly as possible. There's a deadline we've set for December 26, which seems a long way away. It's not. And to hit that deadline, we'll go out to consultation in the end of July or beginning of August. So please, 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 the more responses we get, the better. I'm talking, I want 5 digits at least, so tens of thousands would be ideal. We are part of the Dorset Clean Energy Supercluster. There's a huge opportunity for green energy in the blue economy in Dorset. A lot of it is centred around South Dorset, which gives us some political problems because we get issues about what you're doing in Gillingham. Turns out that we are doing a lot, but the jobs that it'll create around there will spread across the whole of the council area. And I've got 31 slides. It sounds a lot. I will rattle through them, so I will try and share now. Some of them you may have seen before in various guises. I had the team put them together. I did present some of them at a climate literacy training in Swanage. I helped out with. So I'll try and share it. So you should see my PowerPoint. If I do that, can you see that? Yeah. Can anybody see that? No. Yes.
A
We
black
can see
screen.
it.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. And in which case I'll now just start the slideshow if I can. If I can do that. He says. Okay, you see that? Bit of a delay. Okay. So you know who I am. So I guess the important bit of this slide is the 3 things at the bottom. So the things we're having to deal with, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and adaptation, and what we're doing about it, which is carbon neutral Dorset, nature positive Dorset, and resilient Dorset. Hopefully that'll move. Okay, it is moving. Okay, and I need to close that because in the way. Can't read my own slides. I'm not going to read all these slides, and we'll try to get the slide pack to you later. It was too big to send to your Gmail account, so it bounced. But basically, the council plan, all those things on the screen are actually in the council plan, or the strategies below that. And there's basically things that we're trying to do to actually reduce our own emissions. As you'll see later, Dorset Council's emissions are a very small proportion of Dorset Council area emissions. One of the big ones is to move to HVO, which we'll mention in a minute, which is the box on the top left. If you visit County Hall anytime at the moment, we've got a huge number of electric chargers now, and we're planning to put in more. They tend to be all full, and they tend to be all full by our own vehicles rather than members of the staff or members of council. They are Dorset Council owned vehicles, and we're rapidly expanding those. And as they get older and they need replacing, we're converting to electric. But there's some we can't, so we're moving to HVO. There's another slide on that. I won't say any more because a lot of this is covered elsewhere in the slide presentation, and there's that link on the bottom which tells you more as well. So I've said we've brought our targets forward. So Dorset Councils is 2035 and Dorset Council is 2035 and Dorset Council area is 2045. I don't really understand this slide, to be honest, I have to say. But it's basically trajectories, and it's very small. And I imagine you can't read it because I can't read at the bottom, but there are some notes on there. I don't pretend to understand it completely. I know that sounds pretty bad, but unfortunately that's the case. This is probably the more interesting one. So left-hand side is Dorset Council's emissions, right-hand side is the council area emissions. There's a huge difference in scale, as you can see, kilotons versus megatons. And there's a slide in a minute which shows the breakdown. We're doing okay. That move to HVO has made a big difference and will make a big difference. And if I go to the next slide, so this is the county breakdown. And we're slightly, because we're a rural area, some of you know this already, our biggest emissions is agriculture, 32%, as you can see there. 28% is just people driving around, and 20% is heating, which is domestic electricity and gas use mostly. It's mostly heating. And the rest are small, but still significant, and probably each of them probably outweighs Dorset Council's own emissions on their own. So obviously agriculture and transport is something we should be concentrating on. Some of the stuff through the local plan, if we can get it through the inspector, like trying to have heat pumps, trying to have solar on roofs. It's really disappointing that national government still haven't done those yet. Solar panels on roofs should be a no-brainer. We can discuss that later. So this is just a breakdown of Dorset Council's own emissions and where we are. So it's from 2019 to essentially almost 2 years ago now. We are going down. Some of them are going down faster than others. It's a bit of a challenge, but we are working on every single one of those. We've got a new streetlight policy coming out soon, which will reduce it even more. A lot of the streetlights haven't been replaced yet, and they will be. We're going for the lowest energy, lowest impact we can without having to put in extra poles, is basically the summary of the new policy, but it will make a difference. Business mileage is interesting. We're using a lot of EVs now. I did ask the question about how we calculate that in terms of our fleet. Turns out we don't use our fleet. We use the national average figure of diesel versus petrol versus EV, which I suggest might be wrong now. So the guys are going to go away and look at that. But we are reducing our impact mostly by moving to EVs, not so much by reducing actual mileage. I do about 10,000 miles a year as Dorset Council leader, bizarrely, but it isn't an EV. So this is our fleet. I need to move this again because I can't read my slide. So you'll see 44% of the council scope 1 and 2 emissions came from the fleet back in 2024, 23-24, and we're going to cut it. And we're going to use HVO. There was a press release went out, I think, a week or so ago. HVO we're using, so the bottom right bit is really important. There's been a lot of noise recently in the press about HVO being basically palm oil. Palm oil is bad. I hope most of you think that. We have assurances none of our HVO is palm oil. It's genuine chipped fat, waste oil, giving an extra life essentially. And nobody's pretending that burning HVO doesn't generate CO2. It does. It just generates. It's a life cycle across its lifespan. So that's where the gain comes from. You're not digging up oil out of the ground, which has been there for millions of years. And most of our fleet, as it says, can be transitioned immediately. But what the press release did give the timescales, but it's basically by the end of this year. Grid capacity is a huge problem for us in terms of growing the economy. there are very few places we can use in the country, in the county, which have decent grid connections. We are working with suppliers and regional energy system planners, which is a thing we are part of. And we're also looking at a leap, but we've decided at the moment to sort of take a back seat on that. We're not quite sure if that's the best use of our time, but we are working with Regen, as it says on the right, to help us consider what we're going to do. The issue we have, I guess, is that a lot of the green energy stuff requires grid connections around Chickerell and Portland. We are talking with people who might be able to solve that. I can't really say anymore. We put a load of PV on our roofs. We are doing more. There was a press release last week about how much we're saving just on our depots. As it says, we've got another 49 potential sites. So this is buildings we own. We're just rolling out as quick as we can. Basically, it's a huge program, basically, but it's not really cost constrained. We've got the money. It's just finding the time to roll them all out. We don't really have problems with grid connections for them because they tend to be fairly small. Though we do have an aspiration to have our own solar farm, so don't shout at me, but there's a reason for that. Next one is Solar Together. We've signed up to that nearly. We are going to. We're not going to roll it back. I pushed our people to do this. As it says there, many people have had a positive experience. It makes PV cheaper for people, basically. So we're hoping to go live in, as it says there, October 2025. We've just got to go through a final contract signing, but I'm confident that will happen. This is obviously very difficult to read, but this is all about our new energy prospectus and the green energy clusters. The map in the middle shows you the possibilities. The purple blob in the left is the proposed offshore wind, which is I think is that more wind or the other one? There's two of them. I think that's more wind. I can't hear Giles. He's mumbling. Is it more wind, Giles?
I thought it was port wind.
Is it port wind? It's port wind then. Okay. So that's a proposal. There's another company called Source Galileo who are in bed with them. And there's also the Celtic offshore wind opportunities. So the Crown Estate have just published something a couple of days ago. And I also sent them a letter a couple of days ago as well, asking them to get their move on, basically. The whole key for us is that Portland Port is crucial to both of them. The Celtic Sea one seems a long way away, but actually the ports are actually talking to each other. Falmouth has size constraints. Plymouth is basically full with the Navy. Can't really be used. So Portland Port has a huge opportunity, and the intention for the Celtic Sea one, which is floating offshore wind, is that the turbines would actually get assembled essentially there and towed from there to the anchor site. Timescales of this are probably within the next 10 years. I think by 2035, I think we should be on the way. Seems a long way off, but the big problem at the moment is the Crown Estates, but they seem to be on board. It's just trying to persuade them to move a bit faster. Alongside of that, you get the opportunities because you're generating electricity from the offshore wind shown on there. You can do clean energy, hydrogen generation. You can store the hydrogen. And there's also the opportunities for carbon capture. I'm not going to get into that because Giles knows my views on that, and they're completely opposite to his. But yeah, if they're going to give us money and jobs, well, fair enough. It's probably the view. And the other blob on the right is Winfrith. So some of you may be horrified by this, some of you may not be. But the previous government and the current government have an ambition to have small modular reactors in the country. I don't think anybody's ever actually built one yet in the world, but it's a thing apparently. The reality is, if small modular reactors become a thing, you can only put them somewhere where there's either existing nuclear or there has been nuclear before, and Winfrith is one such site. Whether you agree with it or not, it will generate a huge amount of jobs for the area. And this is where our scope 3 is, as I said, is stuff we can't control. So there's lots of toolkits out there. A couple of the guys and I were at an event in Birmingham earlier this year, where a lot of the people were pushing these toolkits. That's what we're trying to do, and it feeds into everything we do. And there's an awful lot of projects going on. As I said, the slides will be shared. As it says, there's a lot, and it's ongoing. We've got lots of people working very hard on all of these things. Some of the things we've struggled with in the past are assets, in terms of staffing. We're changing that by employing more people there as well. Finance is obviously an issue in everything you do, but I'll just leave that there. And resilience, adaptation and resilience. So I'm probably talking to the converted, but I think most of us agree that 1.5 degrees is going to happen. We've missed that target. 2.5 maybe. I saw something. I'm just trying to pull the numbers out of my head, but I think some of that 1 meter high rise in the water, and there's 1 billion people live less than 1 meter high from sea level. So if the Antarctic and Arctic ice shelves start melting even quicker, a lot of people are going to be in a lot of trouble. So part of the things we're doing is actually adaptation, because climate change is happening. We have to react. We're already refusing planning applications, anything to do with basements anywhere in the proximity of Weymouth sea or rivers, essentially getting refused now because of risk to life, because of flooding, increased risk of flooding. We have to deal with it because it is a reality. Otherwise, in 50 years' time, parts of Weymouth mightn't be habitable. So that's one of the things we do. And there's, as you can see, there's community engagement coming up, which I encourage you to take part in. And we're going to go on to detour now, because nature recovery is really important to us. So this slide deck is suddenly going to change because I just slapped another slide presentation slap bang in the middle of this one. So Amy Smith from Nature Recovery gave me this set of slides. I'm not going to read them, but basically it's really important. We're one of the most nature depleted countries in Western Europe, if not the worst. Lots of our animals are going extinct, and we're trying to solve that. So nature recovery strategy, which we're leading on, it's a national initiative. Dorset Council is the lead for Dorset County. BCP are a minor partner. It's out for consultation now, as it says there, and lots of people being involved, including some of you, I'm sure, and it's out there. And I think that it'll make a difference by getting people to work together. It maps the whole of Dorset into areas where we can do things. I'm not going to go through this, but there you go. So this is probably partially interesting. When you hear about there's no more space left for houses, and I'm not suggesting we're going to build loads of houses, but on green space, but actually reality is there's an awful lot of green space out there. It's just not working very well. And there's a list of priorities which are laid out in the strategy, which I'm not going to read through. The reality is we are going to have more houses, though. Local plan, just to go off on a diversion, when we submit the local plan, it has to reflect the housing numbers, and the housing numbers are set not by us, but by government. So we're currently running around about 1,700 houses a year under the existing combined local plans. And Labour has told us we need 3,300 plus change going forward. Come October, that's the number we have to conform to, and that's the number that has to go into the local plan. All I would say is that given the fact that we've got 11,000 houses in Dorset Council's area with planning permission that haven't been built yet, some of which for a long time. So in my ward of Crossways, there's 500 houses south of Walmer Road, which is the road that the co-op's on, if you know Crossways. That green space to one side of the road, it's got permission for 500 homes since 2018. Nothing's happened. Basically, the builder can't make enough money, so they're sitting on it. Hopefully Labour will do something about that in terms of stopping people sitting on land and free it up. Everybody thinks pretty much in Crossways that's where you should build. It's got no triple SIs. It'll make a significant contribution to local economy, but they haven't been built yet. And I'm not going to go into this. Lots of you know things about FIPL. I'm Farming and Protected Landscape, which I'm part of. I see Maria's on here. I think I saw Maria on the call from Local Nature Partnership. This is all what we do in those sort of things. Using change the way our farmers manage their land and in a more sustainable way. Ideally using less glyphosate, but that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down to tonight, to be honest. And this will all be available if it's not already now in terms of the mapping layers. I think there's a version of Dorset Explorer which has got all the layers. I don't know if it's been made public yet, but it says certainly in the document. And I'm just going to skip over these. But there's consultation dates, so please respond. You've still got plenty of time. And I'll go back to the next one. One of the other things we're doing is through schools. There's a Climate Ambassadors Network, so a couple of schools have already signed up. Way Valley in particular in my local area, they've got 2 teachers who signed up for this. It's just a way of getting people interested in nature and doing stuff. And I think this is the final slide. So this is what you could do, opportunities for you. But most of it you do already, to be fair. So but Dorset Council can't do it all on its own. Is the short spiel, and we need your help, and especially for the stuff that are, especially our carbon, but we can't control. If we can help houses be heated better, build better houses, it's a madness that we should be building houses that aren't carbon neutral and cost people money to heat. I sat on the planning committee for the West and South for 5 years, from 2019 to 2024. The Viers Farm development in Bridport, which is now underway. The builders there, I can't remember their names, Hovis, or it's one of the big ones anyway, one of the ones we don't particularly like. They came back to change the phasing. So this is when the Conservative government still had the plan to phase out gas boilers. And they came back to change the phasing, basically to move more houses into the first phase and less into the second phase. And the only reason they did that was to build them with gas boilers rather than use heat pumps. And they had no shame at all. Even when I pointed out, for the people who are going to live in them for the next 100 years, it would cost them money for the next 100 years because of their actions. So yeah, that's the sort of people we're dealing with, and we need national government to change the rules. And I'll leave it there and get off my soapbox. And I'll stop sharing and take a load of questions.
Nick, first of all, thank you very much indeed for a fascinating presentation. Just let's say thank you.
Sorry, it's a bit of a rattle through, but
no, we really appreciate your time, and it's really interesting to hear what Dorset Council is doing. I'm sure there are a huge number of questions, so if you could put your hand up electronically would be preferable, and then we'll run through people as they come. So first hand up is, I can't quite see who it is. You're down as Dorset Can.
Colin Tracy.
Colin, of course it is. Hi, Colin.
Yeah, hi Nick. I'm Colin Tracy from Green Martinstown, or from Martinstown, and part of the Green Martinstown group. And we've just put a community asset transfer application in for the 10 acres of land here. But we've just been told that there's the council are appointing external consultants to assess all your major assets, including the one here. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's progressing, how long it's likely to take, what will be assessed as such?
I have to admit, I have no idea. I didn't realise that was a thing. This doesn't sound pretty good. So the plan is to get rid of assets if we can't build them. So I don't know what they're assessing, to be honest. Are they trying to assess value? I have no idea. I'll have to take that away. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. It's news to me, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try and get you the answer to that.
Julie.
I was going to ask about glyphosate, but obviously, Nick, you've said you don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I'm quite good. There's actually
I just wondered. I wondered what
the had to go out. So
yeah, really, whether, for example, Dorset Council farms to start with are looking at becoming regenerative and or organic as a sort of example lead, and I mean, in particular, we have issues where Dorset Council manage part of our village. There's a sort of agreement, and areas where they manage it, they will use glyphosate, and we have a village policy of trying not to use it. So there's a bit of a sort of conflict going on there. I wondered what the going forward, what the policy was going to be about using herbicides, pesticides.
The current policy, and I've literally signed off on a press release or rewrote it today, because the spraying season, for the want of a better word, is just about to start. It is from June onwards. So I guess the first thing to put out there is that Dorset Council's use of glyphosate is minuscule and compared to agriculture in Dorset County. Yeah, that's a fact. We use very little. Though I appreciate that some people don't think we should use any. We are only spraying once this year. We have a trial underway currently at an undisclosed location. I know where it is, but I'm not going to tell you where. Basically trying out 4 different, basically using glyphosate in 3 alternatives just to see the effect. So basically we're monitoring it every 2 days, and you know it's going to last a month or 6 weeks or so. I guess the other thing is, if there isn't any weed, we won't spray. Is another thing. So it's only spot spraying. We just don't wander down streets spraying the pavement. We'll only spray weeds. If there aren't any weeds there, we won't spray them. So I know there's a petition perhaps in South Street for Bridport to stop us spraying. The solution, if you don't want us to spray South Street and Bridport, just go out and pick all the weeds and you won't get sprayed. I know it's a silly solution, but it'll stop it happening. Our officers tell us we can't stop using glyphosate at the moment until we find an alternative, hence why we're doing the trial. In terms of our own farm, so one of the things I did, and it was me, I scrapped the existing farmers panel. I went on a visit to a farm near Sherborne, and organised by the National Farmers Union in Dorset, and he was very clear that it didn't work, and we've been failing our farm estate for the last 20 odd years, I think is fair to say. So we have a new reformed committee which has proper powers, and one of the things we're looking to do in terms of not only what we're going to do with the estate, but for those farms that we will be taking forward, which is probably most of them, when the tenancies come up, we address the issues that the tenants had, and also try to impose conditions such as sustainable farming and stopping the use of glyphosate. So that's the intention. And that's probably enough on glyphosate.
Let's move on to a question from Richard, who I'm sure will be banging the drum from North Dorset. Richard.
Well, I was going to be banging the drum for the whole of Dorset, actually, Giles. Evening, Nick. I want to talk about planning because you referred to it several times, and clearly you know exactly what I'm going to talk about, because I just cannot understand the insanity of planning rules that fly in the face of all we know about what is required of green homes and meeting the climate change, etc., etc. It appears to be government policy, although it looks like that's been diluted. What can Dorset Council, what can Dorset Council's, Dorset MPs do, since you're mostly Lib Dems these days, to go to Whitehall to try and change this madness? Because how can it possibly be the case that big developers like Persimmon and Barrett's Redrow and so on can come to council meetings as they do and present all these glossy pictures and make all these glossy promises at pre-application presentations, and then as soon as they get on site, they completely ignore it. And the worst thing of all is that your planners do absolutely nothing about it. And they say we can't do anything about it because national legislation doesn't allow us to. And since it doesn't allow us to, developers can put us 2 fingers up and just carry on and trash the place. This is insanity, is it not, Nick? And surely there's someone should be doing something about this.
I'm not so sure about trashing the place. I think bottom line is that what they put forward in glossy brochures isn't, every house is going to have solar panels, because if they did, we make it condition. If they're volunteered to do that, we make sure they absolutely did. So through Section 106 agreements, we are constrained as a planning authority by national rules. it pains me to say so, but you're having sat on a planning committee for 5 years and constantly ask planning officers, why can't we do that? The answer is you can't, because if you do something, if you reject a planning application for reasons that can be easily challenged by the person who's putting the planning application forward, you'll lose, and you do, and it costs you money as well. So it relies on national government to set policies which are the right policies. I still don't understand why every building doesn't have a solar panel on. I've had solar panels on my roof since 2010. It's a no-brainer. It saves me loads of money. I've got batteries. I've got everything, and rainwater recycling as well as another thing. So there's a guy called Matt Wheeldon who works for Wessex Water. He's given a presentation to our Dorset Council members next week. And one of the things I've tried to do in my own house is rainwater recycling, and using rainwater to flush your loos. It's virtually impossible in a house that already exists without ripping all your floorboards up. And if you were completely gutting the building, you could do it. I'd have to rip up floorboards. A bathroom floor which cost me a couple of grand. To stick a pipe in. It's madness, and it doesn't make any financial sense. So, but in new builds, it should be standard. So he would say that the amount of money and energy it costs to process water to potable standard, which then you have to expend a huge amount of energy to pump around the county. So I don't know, most of us use about 100 odd litres of water a day. If you've ever been camping, you've got those big 25-litre water containers which are quite heavy. It's 25 kilos. Each of us use 5 of those a day. That's 100 odd kilos, which you have to pump, and pumps use energy. So it's madness. National government should actually do the right thing, but they're in. I don't know why the developers have such a hold of them, because the developers aren't building the houses anyway as it is. So our local plan is an opportunity to put things in. If you can get it past the inspector, it becomes the rule. The challenge is getting it past the inspector is the reality. But there's not a lot a planning committee can do. The planning committee can't turn around and go, yes, you can build 100 houses, but they've all got to have solar panels, because you can't do that. That's the rule. That's the law, unfortunately.
So there's absolutely no chance of any planning committee saying we insist that all new builds have solar panels, have Swift bricks, have anything, have heat source pumps, anything like this.
Swift bricks got turned down last week by Labour.
Yeah. Well, we may as well give up now. Absurd.
That's not, if I might intervene, that's not quite true. I mean, some counties have developed systems to have higher standards than the building regulations.
If you can get it through the local plan, that's the whole point. Yeah,
you can either do it through the local plan or do it as a separate order, but it has to be approved by the inspectors.
It does, yeah.
But the sooner you do that, the sooner it could be done for Dorset potentially.
Which is why the more people who respond to the local plan, the better. And if we can demonstrate the need, and there is a need, let's face it. So it is a no-brainer.
So you'd encourage us to do that, Nick, would you?
Absolutely. The more responses, the better.
I hear loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Pamela, you're next in line. Could you unmute and ask your question, please?
Well, you said earlier that about a third of the emissions of Dorset come from farming, and bearing in mind that's mostly for animals, animal feed and grazing. How does Dorset Council feel about the plant-based treaty, which other areas have signed, a lot of other areas?
We're not going to sign it. We can't. We can't, absolutely can't.
Why not?
Farming is a huge part of our economy, and bottom line is it's choice for people. I do eat meat. I eat less meat than I used to. Personally, I'm being political here. I've got 4 very large dairy farms in my ward. I wouldn't be able to leave the house if I stood up and say you should all close and you shouldn't have dairy in my ward. That's reality, and that would mean I wouldn't have the opportunity to leave Dorset Council and make a difference. So there are compromises to be had, and there was a slide. That slide, it does break it down. It's not all animal feed. A lot of it is. I agree. A lot of it isn't as well. So it's a huge challenge. I get ethical consumer magazine every month or every 2 months, wherever it comes out. There's stuff in there which is quite horrific. I was very tempted to give up eggs when I read the report about 2 months ago, but I haven't because I like my eggs. But it's yeah, we're not going to have to sign a plant-based treaty. But we were asked that question, and we said no. So
Well, there are things you could do towards that, though, like putting on a lot more, or 100% if possible, plant-based catering in all the council premises, schools.
the reality is, it's not going to make a slightest bit of difference. We've got a population of 380,000 people. You know, our workforce is 4,500. There's kids into it. You're not going to make a dent in it. It's not. You know, the solution is for people to eat more sustainably and better, in my view, and people should do. It's healthier. It saves you money. That's the way to go. Signing up to plant-based treaty, it's just going to piss off the farmers, and they're an important part of our economy as well. So we're not going to go down that route. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Sue, you're next up.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for such a positive report on what Dorset Council is doing, particularly in relation to net zero. My question is a kind of wider one, in that it's frankly very depressing at the moment, in that the councils now controlled by Reform seem to be adopting a really opposite approach. And it seems that, you know, they're getting all the headlines, whereas actually all this remarkable work that you're doing here in Dorset doesn't seem to get nearly so much attention. And I wonder if there are things that you're involved in where you're able to speak in national forums and present an alternative view.
I think the reality is, so I went to this conference organised by APSC, who are a national organisation, and there was probably 300 to 400 people there. Most of them were officers. There's some councillors, including me, but it was all about carbon neutrality and net zero. There's a bit of nature stuff in there, but it was mostly about emissions and what you can do. What I took away from those 2 days is there are a huge number of councils across England and Wales and Scotland doing a huge amount. I think Dorset is an exemplar in many ways. When you go to these things, you actually realise you are doing really well, but there's actually other people out there who are doing even better. And that's not getting into the national press, because bottom line is Reform and Farage sell papers, well, certain papers anyway. So the reality is lots of people are doing good things. There is a risk, of course. So Dorset Council doesn't have elections until 2029. There'll be a general election possibly at the same time, because Labour have to go to the country in 2029. So put the date in your diary. May 2029, there's likely to be national and local elections. Definitely will be local ones anyway. You have the choice then whether you vote in Reform. Hopefully you won't. That's all I can say. And I'd quite like you to vote for me, but if you don't, that's fine. But please don't vote Reform, because it'd be a disaster for Dorset. And our officers after the local elections were quite relieved, I think, that we didn't have elections this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting answer to that question. John, you've waited patiently for your opportunity to speak. Now is your chance.
Nick, it's good to see you here. It's good to meet you. So I'm the project manager for the Great Big Dorset Hedge. Okay. My first comment is thank you very much. The FIFL grants have kept us thriving. And we've just been granted a new one for this year.
I've got another 3 to sign off today, which I haven't done yet anyway.
Don't forget to do it then.
I won't.
I would like to draw attention to the farm panel. Your tenancies are actually not very populous amongst the farms that have engaged with the project so far, and I've just heard why, because you've turned upside down the panel and starting afresh. Perhaps now is a good time to look again at whether focusing on hedgerows would be an easy win-win for both your tenants and yourselves and for us, because we got a couple hundred volunteers around the county who would very much like to survey those hedges, and later on, when we found the right place to do it, we'd like to plant up the gaps and things like that. So it's a great project, as I realise you've noticed because you've been funding it, but there's scope for further collaboration, and I think we'll also find that's the case when it comes to the local nature recovery strategy. There's scope for a higher profile for hedges in that document, and you'll hear about that in the consultation. So I'll be in touch with Amy one-to-one. I think there's a great future for the project, and I think it's an easy win for everyone to participate.
I would just say, yeah, we have completely reformed the panel. It didn't really kick off properly until January this year. One of the complaints was the way we've treated our tenants in terms of length of tenancy and things like that. But we also, you know, the farms through councils started, I think, after the Boer War. It may be after the Great War. I think it was the Boer War, but it was to give people returning from fighting a living, I think. But the intention was always that you were meant to have a bit of land, learn the ropes, and then move on. So some people don't move on in our existing farms. I think we need to sit back and reassess the value of it and what the purpose is now. You know, we're over 100 years on. Is it still fit for purpose? Should we be doing something else? We own 42 farms currently. I think there's one up for sale at the moment, but you know, it's a huge opportunity in terms of hectarage to do things differently.
Yeah.
And that's the intention. And it's also about one of the problems is, you know, giving people 5-year tenancies is a problem because they can't raise money because, you know, banks won't give you any money. So that's is in opposition to learning the ropes and moving on as well. So it's how we manage that. There's opportunities for biodiversity net gain through our own farm estate. You know, B&G units are an issue. You have to have them to build these days. So if you're going to build houses for people, regardless of whether it's by Persimmon or Wyatt's or by registered providers, you need B&G credits or units. I think it's units. So we have to provide those either the developer does on site or by buying the units elsewhere. So I think there was a press release last week when we've made an agreement with some farmer somewhere locally, which will provide a load of B&G units, but we need more because you have to demonstrate at least 10% net biodiversity net gain on a planning application now.
Thank you, Nick.
Just going back to the previous question about housing standards, one of the things we're doing. So one of our other council priorities is to build quality affordable homes for people, and by affordable, that's people can afford on a Dorset wage, not a DFL down for London wage. And one of the ways we're doing that, or looking to do that, is to use our land, because Dorset Council owns a huge amount of land. I'm not talking about the farm estate; it's about stuff the 6 councils had. And so when we're disposing of land, the first thing our officers are supposed to do is ask the relevant people, can we build on it? Because if we can offer it to a registered provider. They can build on it. They won't have the land value to take into account. So that means they can, afford to build genuine affordable homes, preferably for social rent would be my preference. But by doing that, we have control of the land, and B, we have control of the building standards as well, because it's our land and it's our gift. We can actually say you have to build the right things, because why wouldn't you? So that's a in terms of numbers, it's not huge numbers. You're talking hundreds, maybe 1,000 a year, maybe max, if we get to our target. But that's one way of doing it, and it's also providing houses that people can afford to live in and afford to heat. So, sorry, I interrupted you. I meant to say it before, but I forgot.
As part of that, I hope you'll consider some of the car parks, which are obviously close to infrastructure and roads, etc., which are ideal places for affordable housing.
I think it's fair to say, I'm just using Weymouth as an example, and please don't put this on the front page of the Echo tomorrow. But there's lots of car parks in Weymouth which we could build on. There is still a need for car parking, and I think the solution is probably a decent multi-story on the edge of town somewhere. The fact that people drive all the way to the pavilion to park is quite shocking to me. You're driving all the way through town centre. Most of the people are on ice cars, internal combustion engines. They're polluting the atmosphere. It's rubbish. It shouldn't happen. And if things come to fruition, and there's a really good news today I can't tell you about, but that car park will disappear soon, which is causing some of our officers to get really jittery because it generates a huge amount of income. The bottom line is to provide the parking elsewhere and use the park and ride. Park and rides are difficult. People are still against them, but if you've got electric buses running every 10 minutes, maybe they'll buy into it. I think the reality is something like a multi-story car park on the Swannery site, if you know that, and close all the rest. So sort of reduce the capacity but still provide parking closest to town. It's not very far to walk from Swanray.
Room for improvements. Thank you. Mark, your turn.
Thanks, Giles, and thanks, Nick, for your presentation and your time this evening. My question, which I did pop in the chat, you probably haven't had a chance to look at it, so but it's really around what we do know about the extent to which lifestyles will need to change for all of us, really, if we're going to address this problem. And as you quite rightly pointed out, Dorset's own, as Dorset Council's own emissions are a tiny part of the overall scope of things we need to change. But actually, it's quite difficult to get people engaged on that. And I just wondered what the plans were for. I seen the ambassadors program, which you touched on briefly, but in other places, I know whether it is full citizens' assemblies or just opportunities to bring people together. It does seem to mean that communities who are properly engaged not only start to develop the solutions themselves, but also participate in council activities much more. And I know from being on a panel some time ago with a guy from Camden Council, one of the things they found is actually getting people to talk about resilience, community resilience, for example, engages more people than saying, we'd like to talk to you about climate change, because for many people it just switches them off before they even get in the door. So like building community resilience and things like that does seem to do it. But yeah, I guess, and I think it's the Climate Change Committee says that, local authorities are ideally placed to take the leadership on these issues. So putting aside my slight disappointment about our unwillingness to stand up to the agricultural sector, which I know Aberdeen, for example, are happy to say they'll stop using fossil fuels and in the heart of the oil district. So, but anyway, I'll put that to the side. I think the real question is, how can we engage people more effectively to bring them on this journey and to make them aware of the problems we face and what can they do to help build the solutions?
Well, the consultation on resilience is happening soon. So that was on one of the slides. I can't remember the exact dates, but it is happening soon. It's about education in the end, isn't it? But the reality is, it's all very well telling people how to behave. It doesn't work in my view. You need to give them a reason to do it, and it also needs to be affordable. That's the reality. Change the way supermarkets work. The stuff, especially through the waste and recycling streams, which are coming down the line. So there's extended producer responsibility, which is already kicking in and is ramping up. So basically, the polluter pays. So Dorset Council got a lot of money last year for that, basically because we have to collect the recycling, so we get paid money for that now. And that's been extended. I know some of the breweries are complaining about glass, for example. So, for example, someone like Hall and Woodhouse, the glass bottles they use in their own pub, they get rid of themselves. Yet they still get charged DPR because that's the way the system works, which seems a bit unfair on them, but gives us more money. But any solution for people is if you're struggling to heat your home and struggling to feed your kids, the last thing on your mind probably is whether it's what you buy is wrapped in plastic or not. That's the reality, and we need to change that. Oops, sorry, my phone's going. Stop at that.
Yeah.
And communication. So we put a huge number of comms out, especially on waste. So we are the highest recycling unitary in the country, or England anyway. 62% recycling, which is great. That means 38% isn't. So, and of that 38% that's missing, when we do an assessment of black bags, so that the remaining 38% goes to black bags. Of that black bag total, around about 32% is recyclable.
Okay, I guess my question is, sorry to come back on it, but I think your answer sort of misses the point, because I think that assumes already that those are people who are interested in making those solutions. And as I think the problem is, and the reason why reform are creeping up the agenda is because they do see this as being things that will make or they're portraying this as things that will make things more expensive. They will things that make people's lives more difficult. But your point about, feeding the kids is we have to face up to the reality that we face in the next few years a severe possibility of food shortages because of droughts, floods. So people's fear about feeding their kids, people should be aware that that is a problem associated with what we're talking about this evening. And I guess it's those sorts of conversations, really. How do we get people in a room and make them aware of these issues and then say, look, we're all in this together. What does it mean for you in your area? Because when people know that, they do then seem to, come up with the solutions rather than wait to be told. I guess it's that, how do we create those forms of engagement is the question, really. Not communicating to people, but providing them with an opportunity to engage with us.
I guess organisations like you, towns and parishes, Dorset Council, but it's getting people to pay attention. We put stuff out there all the time, and that's the communication bit, but actually trying to get people to turn up to things is extremely difficult generally. I don't know how many people you've got in DCAN, but in terms of membership, a couple of hundred maybe. I don't know. But in the scheme of things, it's a very small number of people, isn't it? Most people don't engage in anything. They see the headlines on whatever news feed. They don't even watch the news anymore, most of them. And that's the reality. You get the news streamed to your phone. It's getting that narrative across, and that's way above what Dorset Council can do. It's national, isn't it? And that's why Reform are getting all the news. And I hate to knock the BBC, but some of the trying to avoid bias stuff is a bit rubbish, to be honest. It gives other people a platform they probably don't deserve.
Nick, I got to start moving things along a little bit. And in answer to your question, I think it was around 850 people we've got as members of DCAN, but it is a drop in the ocean of the population of Dorset. We're going to start drawing to an end. So 2 more questions, and then I think I'll close it down. So Alan, you first, followed by Beryl. Alan, you appear to be muted. Oddly, your mute sign is not showing up. We can't hear you. I think we're struggling with you at the moment. Yeah, let's go on to Beryl and see whether we can sort you out some other means. If you put your question in the chat, perhaps, Beryl.
Can't hear you either, Beryl.
You also can't hear. Well, that's one way of bringing the questions to a close. But Beryl, I'm afraid I don't know what the problem is. Again, I suggest you put your question in the chat and see if we can share it that way. Let me just see. I can't see a question.
Dying to ask a question.
Please do, yes. Sorry, who was that? Somebody asked whether they could ask a question.
It was Sam that's trying to.
Sam's got it.
Well, Charles, I've got my hands up. Can I just chuck in here?
Please do.
Nick, I'm the leader of the Dorset Greener Homes, and we've been working with that. We've talked to Anthony Littlechild about what Dorset Council can do to publicise our open homes, and we thank him for his life. We've got actually 8 of our open home hosts with us this evening, which is great. But can I just use this opportunity to say if any of the participants know anybody who has done something to their house, who've made it greener and are thinking about opening, please get in touch. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be a greener home, doesn't have to be a grand design, but anything that is done there. Vicky already said this, but I'm looking for more people. So I'm sorry, that was a shameless cut into your thing. Thank you.
Perfectly.
I see the thing in the chat. So yeah, my home is as green as it can be, I think, to be honest. I've got 7 kilowatts of PV, 65 thermal vacuum tubes, EV charger, 43.5 kilowatt hours of battery storage. I've got a wind turbine as well down the bottom of the garden, which just charges batteries for my lawnmower. But anyway,
would you consider opening in September for?
Can we come and visit you?
Could do. I've got a heat pump as well, so
Let's go and visit.
Please, can we visit?
Have a trip there.
You can. It's nothing special. It's just a lot of retrofitted bodgy stuff. It works. So
thank you. I'll be in touch.
So I think we probably is a good time to wrap it up. And I'm sorry, Alan, that we can't hear you. It's just unfortunate. If you ask your question later, we'll pass it on. But I think just to wrap it up, to say thank you very much indeed, particularly to Nick Harlan for a fascinating talk. You know, I know you're an experienced sort of county level politician, but it's nevertheless tiring and exhausting to do a full day's work and then come not knowing what questions you're going to be asked and you know what difficult positions you might be put in. We really appreciate what you do. We try and be a constructive, if critical, partner for Dorset Council. You know, we do ask questions and we do hopefully support you as well and congratulate you when you get things right. So you know, that's the way we
feel free to criticize me when I get things wrong, because I do. So yeah. we are doing our best. There's lots of opportunities in Dorset, and clean energy and carbon zero and nature are part of most of them, to be honest. It's doing the things the right way.
And we look forward to deeper collaboration going into the future. So thank you very much indeed for that, Nick. And I'd also like to thank very much all the people here who've come this evening. AGMs are somewhat of a turn off. They you know, we have to do it, and it's part of our sort of natural business. A very important part, in fact, to be a charity and to be properly represented. So thank you very much indeed for coming. Really appreciate your support, and we look forward to you know, your further contribution to our many projects, teams, and opportunities that we've got in the future. So thank you very much indeed. I think with that, I'll just call it to a finish and say goodbye. Thank you.